Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the weeds on Attack on Titan's ending.
Specifically, Eren Yeager.
Exactly. What was his deal, really? Was he just, caught up in fate? Or is there something more deliberate, a hidden plan?
It's definitely an ending that split the audience, didn't it? So many ways to read it.
Totally. And we're going to try and shed some light by looking at our sources, pulling from both the anime and the manga. See where they line up, where they differ.
Right, because those differences, especially in the anime, seem pretty key. It's all about that central question: was Eren a mastermind, or was he ultimately a victim?
We're hoping to maybe crack open some of those deeper mysteries, figure out his real endgame.
Yeah, let's see what the evidence suggests.
Okay, so let's kick off with this big one, the final timeline theory.
Ah, yes.
The core idea being basically that Eren knew he was going to lose, that his death wasn't, well, it wasn't a failure, it was the goal.
And the anime really seems to lean into this maybe more explicitly than the manga did.
How so? Where do we see that?
Well, think way back. Episode 1, that see you later moment between Eren and Mikasa. The anime draws it out a bit more, right? There are more visible tears from Eren. Looking back now, with this theory in mind, it feels different.
Like he already knew something awful was coming.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing from the jump.
Potentially. It adds this layer of tragedy right from the start, and then you have Mikasa's headaches.
Right. The anime really emphasizes those.
Exactly. And the interpretation that keeps popping up is that these are like echoes, bleed-throughs from other failed timelines.
Suggesting she's subconsciously connected to these other paths Eren might have seen.
It fits the theory, certainly. It implies Eren isn't just experiencing one reality, but navigating, or at least aware of, multiple possibilities.
And wasn't there something specific in paths? An anime-only visual?
Yeah, that quick shot the sand shifting when Zeke is talking to Grisha.
Okay.
It's subtle, but it looks like a disruption, like
Right.
time itself within paths is being messed with. Could that be Eren influencing things or becoming aware?
It's these visual hints, isn't it? They just add fuel to this idea that Eren had a much bigger picture in mind.
Absolutely. And it builds towards the end, towards chapter 139 territory, the anime's portrayal of Eren in those final moments.
And did that feel different?
Ah, those close-ups on his face. There's a sense of almost relief, resignation, maybe.
Which contrasts with how some manga readers saw him there, maybe more desperate or confused.
Precisely. That sense of relief, if that's what it is, really supports the final timeline idea. It suggests his death isn't a tragic failure, but a necessary step. A release, even.
And the anime added dialogue too, didn't it?
It did. A big one. Eren explicitly says, I wanted this.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty direct.
Yeah, it wasn't quite framed like that in the manga. It really hammers home the idea of deliberate choice, even in the face of, well, the rumbling.
So if he wanted this, wanted his own death, essentially, what was the point?
The theory goes that he saw multiple futures, right? And in many of them, maybe even most, things ended badly. The curse continued. But he foresaw one specific path where Mikasa makes a crucial choice, her choice to kill him.
The choice that breaks Ymir's curse.
Exactly. So he manipulates events subtly, or maybe not so subtly, to ensure that timeline becomes reality. Even that final scene with Mikasa and the bird wrapping the scarf.
Yeah.
In the anime, it feels more symbolic. Like a visual confirmation, the cycle's broken, the curse is lifted, his goal is achieved.
It really paints a picture of the anime deliberately reinforcing this interpretation. Eren as the architect of his own demise, for a greater purpose.
Seems that way.
Okay, so if this was the long game, let's look back a bit earlier. Season 4. Were there clues being dropped even then? Hints that Eren knew more than he was letting on.
Oh, I think definitely. You look back with the ending in mind, and certain lines just pop.
Like what?
Like in episode 12, Eren says, I'm just a slave to freedom.
Right, that paradoxical line.
Yeah. On its own, it's confusing. But through this final timeline lens, maybe it means he felt bound by the path needed to achieve ultimate freedom for his people, for Ymir.
Bound by the future he saw. Like the only way out was through this very specific, terrible sequence of events.
That's one strong interpretation. He had to become a slave to this specific path to break everyone else free.
That makes a chilling kind of sense. What about other Season 4 things, like Historia's pregnancy?
Yeah, the timing of that. It's pretty significant. There's that whole theory connecting it to Ymir's soul possibly being reincarnated.
How does that fit in?
Well, it adds to this theme of cycles, endings, and beginnings. If Eren is manipulating events to break Ymir's curse, coordinating things around a potential rebirth, it's another layer suggesting a pre-planned or at least heavily foreseen sequence. It's more speculative, sure, but it fits the pattern.
Okay, and Falco. His dream about a flying titan.
Right. At the time, just seemed like, whoa, weird foreshadowing.
But how does it connect to Eren potentially knowing the future?
The idea is that paths allows for these kinds of leaks, maybe? Memories or glimpses of the future bleeding through. Falco eventually does become the Flying Jaw Titan.
So another hint that the future Eren might have seen through the Founder was already sort of echoing back into the present, suggesting things were locked in.
It could be read that way, yeah. Another piece suggesting a fixed trajectory that Eren was potentially aware of or even guiding.
Okay, now this is crucial. You brought up the big difference in Eren's breakdown with Armin, that I don't want that scene.
Chapter 139, hugely divisive.
What was the key difference, the line the anime left out, and why does it matter so much?
It's a really big deal. In the manga, during that raw confession, Eren says very clearly, I saw all our futures and chose this hell.
He chose it, explicitly.
Yes, and that line is gone in the anime version of the scene.
Whoa.
In the manga, that line paints him as someone fully aware, who weighed the options, saw the horror, and still actively picked that path. He owned the choice, the hellishness of it.
And taking it out.
Taking it out softens that, doesn't it? It leans more into the interpretation that maybe he felt compelled, that it was the only path, rather than one he actively, if regrettably, selected from many. It makes him seem less like he willingly embraced the evil, perhaps.
Less culpable, maybe,
Yeah.
or more tragic. It definitely shifts the nuance. So the anime omitting his claim of choosing the hell really backs up this idea of him being driven by necessity, by the final time limit.
I think it strongly supports that reading, yeah. Which brings us nicely to some other key differences between the versions.
Right, because it wasn't just that one line. The anime tweaked quite a few things in the finale.
And they mostly seem to point in the same direction, reinforcing this particular view of Eren. You mentioned Mikasa's agency earlier.
Yeah, in the anime, her killing Eren feels much more like her decision, coming from her own understanding, her own will.
I agree. Some manga readers felt she was almost like fated or programmed to do it because of her Ackerman bond or her love. The anime gives her more power in that moment, it feels like.
It really does. And Ymir, the smile, that was purely an anime edition, right?
Yes, tiny visual, huge implications. As Mikasa makes that final heartbreaking choice, Ymir smiles faintly.
What's the interpretation there?
Widely seen as Ymir approving, wanting this, seeing Mikasa break free from a kind of obsessive love, perhaps mirroring Ymir's own situation with King Fritz, and in doing so, providing the key to freeing Ymir herself.
So it suggests Eren's plan, this terrible path, was actually aligned with Ymir's deepest desire for freedom, too.
It adds that layer, yeah. It makes it feel less like just Eren's tragic burden and more like a necessary convergence of fates.
Okay, and the last big one, Armin's thank you.
Ah,
In the manga, it could be read more straightforwardly, right? Like, thank you for the sacrifice, even though it was horrific.
Yeah, complex gratitude. But the anime...
The anime delivery felt different. There was almost a hint of something else in the tone. Sarcasm. Disbelief.
Ambiguity, definitely. Like, Armin understands the sheer awfulness of what Eren did, the moral cost, but he still has to acknowledge the outcome that they're free from the Titans. It's not a simple thank you.
It makes the whole thing feel much more morally gray, much more complex than just Eren the hero who sacrificed himself.
Exactly. So you take these changes together, Mikasa's stronger agency, Ymir's confirming smile, Armin's complex, almost biting gratitude.
It paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does. It moves away from the interpretations some had of manga Eren being, well, pathetic or whiny in the end.
Then towards
A more tragic figure, someone who orchestrated his own horrific downfall because he believed it was the only way to achieve that greater purpose.
even Levi's salute at the end feels heavier in the anime, more somber.
Right, like a reluctant acknowledgement of a necessary, terrible evil that Eren took on.
Which naturally leads us straight into the fan reactions because, wow, people had feelings.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't quiet, was it? The ending really set the fandom ablaze.
There was a definite split, wasn't there? Particularly between manga readers and anime onlys.
Very much so. A lot of manga readers, especially right after 139 drop, were really vocal about their disappointment.
What were the main complaints?
Feeling Eren's character felt off, inconsistent. That final breakdown seemed to some whiny or contradictory to the determined character built up over season 4.
Okay. Whereas the anime-only crowd,
generally seemed to have a more positive or at least more accepting reaction. Many saw him more as that tragic hero figure we just discussed, burdened, forced into impossible choices.
And you think that difference comes down mainly to these changes the anime made?
I think those changes played a huge part in shaping that perception, yeah. They smoothed the landing, so to speak.
But here's the really interesting counterargument, right? That maybe Isayama's plan was consistent all along.
Exactly, that this was always the intended ending and the anime just executed it maybe more clearly or perhaps in a way that landed better emotionally for a broader audience.
Is there evidence for that? That this ending was baked in from early on?
There are definitely breadcrumbs, moments you can point to throughout the series that gain new meaning in light of the ending.
Like what? Back in the early seasons.
Think season 1 again, that tearful, see you later.
Right, you mentioned the anime emphasizing it.
And how eerily it mirrors the final shot of the series.
Yeah.
It creates this powerful bookend suggesting a cycle, a predetermined path or relationship dynamic that was always heading towards this conclusion.
That's a strong visual link. What else?
Season 2, Eren has that weird nightmare sequence.
Vaguely remember that.
In it, he has a vision of Mikasa killing him.
Whoa.
At the time, it's just disturbing. Seems random, maybe. But knowing the ending, it hits differently, like a glimpse of the fixed future he couldn't yet understand.
So hints of paths or the Founder's power affecting him even back then?
Potentially. And then there's the end of season 3, that explicit paths preview.
Ah, yeah, that was very cryptic.
Intentionally so, hinting at multiple timelines, branching possibilities. It feels like Isayama was absolutely seeding these ideas long before the finale.
So the argument is, the anime didn't change the ending's core intent, it just clarified it.
Yeah.
The intended themes maybe resonate more clearly.
That's the idea. It provided a more cohesive delivery, ironing out some of the bumps that tripped up some manga readers and led to that feeling of betrayal or confusion about Eren's final characterization.
Okay, so we've gone through the theories, the clues, the differences. Let's try and bring it back to the core question. Our deep dive verdict. Eren Yeager. Mastermind pulling the strings. Or tragic slave to fate.
Well, like most things with Attack on Titan, it's probably not that simple, is it?
Probably not. But based on the evidence, especially how the anime presents it.
Our conclusion leans towards, well, a bit of both, but with emphasis on the choice. It seems very likely, given the Founder's power, that Eren did see the potential futures. All of them, maybe.
Okay, so he had the knowledge.
But he wasn't just watching the movie. We think the evidence points to him deliberately choosing the timeline, selecting the specific path, however horrific, that led to Ymir's freedom and the end of the Titans.
So, mastermind in the sense that he made the crucial, world-altering choice.
Yes, he picked the least worst option from his perspective, maybe. The one that achieved the ultimate goal, even at immense cost.
But there's always a but.
But he was absolutely still a victim of that knowledge, of that burden. Seeing everything, knowing the price, it clearly broke him emotionally.
We see that in the 139 breakdown, regardless of the slightly different portrayal. The weight was immense.
Undeniably. He wasn't a cold, calculating machine. He was emotionally shattered by the necessity of his actions, even if he believed them necessary.
Right. So not a simple puppet, not a simple puppeteer. Aware, driven, made a choice, but also deeply, tragically impacted by it.
Exactly. And ultimately, it feels like the anime really worked to clarify that his apparent loss, his death, wasn't a mistake or a failure in his plan.
It was the plan.
It was the intended outcome. A strategic, intentional, heartbreaking sacrifice to achieve what he saw as the only possible way to break the cycle. A very, very debatable greater good.
Precisely. The anime lens helps frame his final actions less as a sudden, confusing betrayal of his character.
And more as the agonizing, brutal execution of a plan he felt locked into, the only path he saw to truly end the Age of Titans and the hatred it spawned.
Well, this has certainly given us a lot to chew on. Hopefully it's given you, our listeners, food for thought too.
For sure.
And that brings us to our final thought for you. Thinking about all this, the anime changes, the manga roots, has your own view of Eren's ending shifted at all?
Yeah. Does this analysis change how you perceive his final actions?
And what does that then say about bigger ideas, like heroism or free will versus destiny, especially when someone seems to know the future?
It's complex stuff, no easy answers.
Definitely not. Something to keep pondering. Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us today.